When a disaster happens, it becomes news around the globe. Whether it's the scale or the spectacle,
Debris. Look at all the debris. Look at all the debris in the air.
the financial cost or the lives lost, these massive events fill mankind with fascination and fear. In this series, we're looking at some of the biggest disasters to ever strike the planet.
This is Jeff Petrosky. I'm in Joplin. I have a very destructive, probably F4, maybe F5 going through the city of Joplin right now.
Over the next hour, we'll bear witness to the planet's most powerful weather event. Deadly 300-mile-per-hour cyclones traveling at 60 miles per hour, annihilating everything in their path. These are nature's ultimate weapons of terror, devastating and unpredictable, working over land or sea. Run and cover, because today we're looking at the top 10 tornadoes. Absolutely anywhere on the planet, whenever warm, moist air meets cold, dry air, a tornado can form. These whirling disasters routinely wreak havoc on every continent.
Isaac is right there.
The principle is simple. Rising warm air pushes up denser cold air, creating an ascending current. If the direction or speed of the wind changes with enough energy, the current starts spinning. That rotation can whip itself into a tornado. As the spinning wind sucks in more air, it can accumulate unimaginable energy and give birth to currents of staggering power.
We are 2 miles west of the western edge of Chickasaw. It's massive. This thing is massive.
May 3rd, 1999 is the tornado that we study in meteorology school. It is infamous.
Let's start with number 10 in our ranking, and one of the most powerful tornadoes ever recorded on Earth. It hit Oklahoma in 1999, the Bridge Creek Moore tornado.
Now is the time to get down, and we really need you folks to think about the very safest place you can possibly go, away from windows.
Each year, more than 1,000 tornadoes rake the United States, more tornadoes than all other countries combined. Most of these twisters spin through an area called Tornado Alley, where geography conspires to help create perfect storms.
A lot of explosions going off in the middle of this tornado, so significant damage being done. The winds are just incredible when we went into Westheimer.
When warm, humid air from the Gulf of Mexico moves northwest, it can encounter cold, dry air from Canada and the Rocky Mountains. That causes the warm air to rise rapidly and start the horizontal rotation of the cool air currents. Perfect conditions for thunderstorms. Most don't last long, but some can turn into superstorm cells that endure and give rise to extreme weather. If the speed of the winds varies with altitude, the updrafts can begin to rotate vertically, and the hot air rushes in to form a tornado, like a mini hurricane, but much more powerful.
This is absolutely incredible. Look at it come down.
Whoa.
There it is!
Wow, look how close.
Look at that! Oh my God! Cisterns!
Look how close
We got cisterns!
Yeah!
We have monsters!
Look at that! We're playing soundtrack!
We're in Oklahoma, May 3rd, 1999. Today is a perfect day for tornadoes. Every condition is met for them to form, and they do. Dozens are observed throughout the day. Most of the storms aren't intense, and they don't last long. But at 5:26 p.m., a monster appears.
Man, that is one nasty.
Well, it's getting still, and that's when it's bad.
Oh, Lord.
I'm getting some wind here. I'm on the north side of Newcastle. Multi-vortex, wow. Multi-vortex, Mike, as it's going through the northwest side of Newcastle.
Oh my gosh.
This is the largest storm we have seen in the metro area.
The tornado is a category EF5 on the Fujita scale. It's a scale that's used to classify tornadoes according to their wind speed and the damage they cause. An EF5 is the most destructive.
And all the debris in the air. There is a tremendous amount of debris in the air. We pray and plead with you, please get down now.
Only 1 in 2,000 storms grow this powerful, with winds whipping at over 480 kilometers per hour. This extremely rare tornado churns through several cities. In 85 minutes, it destroys everything in its 60-kilometer path.
Now to Tara Bloom in more at the damage site. Tara, you're live.
Mike, there is a lot of damage all around us here. This is the First Baptist Church. You can see their sign hanging right there, and we can see the path of the tornado. I don't know if you can see all those homes in the distance, but then it crossed Southwest 89th.
Only tornadoes can produce such strong winds. They generate 28 gigawatts of energy, enough to power 21 million homes. Packing a punch like that, these events are devastating.
Look into that neighborhood. Many of those homes are completely demolished.
It shatters buildings, cars, tractors, trucks. The smallest vehicles get swept away like a toy by the violent, spinning cone of wind.
Twisted like toys. It's horrible.
Such a powerful tornado destroys everything in its path.
You can see that. And I asked, are there injuries? He says, yes, there are injuries. How many? He said, too many to count.
And in a place like Oklahoma that sees more than 50 tornadoes a year, residents know the only thing they can do is shield themselves and wait, hoping to stay out of the path of the destruction.
It probably just took John Hensley. Get in the cellar, hurry up.
FM dial on 104.1, 107.7.
Mike,
that is damage,
Mike,
okay.
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
Mike,
Yes,
you got to look at this. This is phenomenal. It's gone. The neighborhood is gone. We are over a neighborhood. It is gone, Mike. It's level. There's nothing here. 350 homes, Mike, that are gone. It's just foundations and rubble. I mean, it's incredible.
On that terrible day, the horrified residents of the small towns of Bridge Creek and more found the tornado bearing directly down on them. The winds were so powerful that it tore the bark off the trees. When the dust settled, the result was sobering. 8,000 buildings damaged or destroyed, and more than $1.5 billion in damage. Houses razed to the ground, and everything in them strewn for miles. The tornado killed 36 people and injured 600 others. These were people in communities that were prepared and trained to respond to this kind of event. But in the face of this gigantic twister, they could do nothing to escape it. Such is the power of tornadoes, unlike anything on Earth.
New video provides an aerial view of a so-called fire-nado. It's essentially a rotating column of fire that formed in Shasta County, producing tornado-like winds in Redding. Those conditions left behind...
Our number 9 event seems to come straight out of a Hollywood disaster movie, where a 320-kilometer-per-hour vortex will simply burst into flames. This is the car fire tornado that hit California in 2018. Improbable as it sounds, certain conditions can cause fires to rise into ferocious whirlwinds of fire fueled by intense heat and air movement. Whirlwinds are both spectacular and very dangerous, but they are not the same as tornadoes. The whirlwinds of fire emerge upward from the ground, while tornadoes reach down from above. True fire tornadoes are extremely rare, and very few images exist of this incredible and terrifying spectacle. The first one caught on film struck in Canberra, Australia in 2003. In less than a half hour, a fire tornado that measured a category EF3 with winds of 240 kilometers per hour devastated a 20-kilometer area on the outskirts of the city.
Holy Jesus. I've never in my life seen anything like it.
This is bad news.
While the tornado itself caused no deaths, the resulting Canberra fire saw 250,000 hectares of bush go up in smoke. The inferno destroyed 500 homes and killed 4 people.
We're learning more about the wicked storm that roared across Shasta County and into Redding last week. A freak of nature, the fire-nado.
The circumstances that gave rise to the Canberra tornado also happened on the other side of the world. This time, the stage was set in California on July 26, 2018. On that day, a fire, known as the Car Fire, that had ravaged the area for 3 days grew so fierce that it created its own weather system. When the overheated air comes into contact with cooler air, it can produce so-called pyrocumulonimbus clouds. A direct consequence of the fire, these clouds can trigger thunder, rain, hail, but also tornadoes.
More than a quarter of a mile wide, rising some 16,000 feet into the air, churning across the ground for as long as 80 minutes, whatever you call it. The firestorm that burned into Redding last week was not something we see very often. And even
the tornado's vortex sucks all the air out of the areas it travels through. The phenomenon fuels the fire even more, rapidly burning everything in its path.
And with that, created this monster fire.
In the case of the Car Fire, the fire tornado rose to a height of 5 kilometers. Inside this pillar of fire, winds of 1,500 degrees Celsius swirled at 225 kilometers per hour. Those hostile winds were strong enough to topple buildings and hot enough to melt steel.
Very, very impressive wind speeds, estimated to be in excess of 143 miles per hour. It was definitely unusual.
Luckily for the locals, the tornado didn't last long. It traveled less than 2 kilometers. But on its infernal journey, the fire caused the death of 7 people, razed 1,500 buildings, and ignited an area of 93,000 hectares. If the tornado had taken a slightly different course, the nearby town of Redding and its 90,000 inhabitants would have been completely destroyed. These extremely rare phenomena presented the whole world an apocalyptic vision, a real hell on Earth.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
Watch for this area has now been changed to tornado warning.
Tornadoes are hitting Tennessee, Georgia, Ohio, 2 in Illinois, 2 more in Indiana.
If conditions are right for one tornado to form, then the same conditions can set off several at once.
Severe thunderstorm warning has been changed to a tornado warning.
When a single storm generates several tornadoes at the same time, it's called a tornado outbreak.
The tract apparently is taking it from northeastern Warren County into southeastern Montgomery
In
County.
8th place in our ranking, it is precisely an event of this kind that suddenly pummeled 13 states in the United States. The infamous super eruption of 1974.
The injured begin pouring into Huntsville Hospital.
It's a date most people who grew up in Kentucky and lived here 40 years ago will never forget. April 3rd, 1974, the April 3rd tornadoes.
The day of the killer tornadoes.
There have been other tornado outbreaks with more total tornadoes, but never one with as many large, deadly tornadoes.
Nothing like it had been seen before. On April 3rd, conditions were ideal for a massive storm system to form that spawned multiple storm supercells over much of the central plains of the United States. Heavy rains and thunderstorms drenched the area. From Alabama in the south to the tip of Indiana in the north, the atmospheric pressure plummeted. Hail, one of the main warning signs of tornadoes, begins to fall. In Illinois, people start reporting hailstones the size of baseballs. That would have been bad enough. But the worst was yet to come. The first tornado was observed in the city of Boone, Indiana around 1:30 p.m. Only a category EF3, it didn't last long, but it caused the first damage when it touched down. Calm then reigned for several hours. It seemed as if the worst was over. But at 7:20 p.m., a swarm of tornadoes strafed the area. From that moment, the region descended into total chaos. 2 Category EF5 tornadoes ravaged the state of Indiana over more than 150 kilometers. They killed 44 people as they carved their path of carnage. 10 minutes later, 2 others, both Category EF3, touched down in Illinois and Indiana. And at 8:30 p.m., in Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, and Ohio, 10 additional tornadoes formed, including 3 Category EF4 storms and 1 Category EF5. Over the next dreadful hour, 16 more tornadoes formed at a rate too fast for the population to be alerted. The hellish rhythm would continue throughout the night. At the height of the super eruption, 15 tornadoes touched down simultaneously. The activity was so intense that the authorities placed all of Indiana on tornado alert. It was a first in the history of weather forecasting.
Police equipment and ambulances.
After the first tornado observed in Indiana hit, no fewer than 148 tornadoes touched down in a total of 13 states. 34 of them were Category EF3, 23 were Category EF4, and 7 were Category EF5. 7 of the strongest tornadoes ever recorded in the United States touched down in just 24 hours. To put that in perspective, the next 7 EF5s would be spread out over a decade. On that day in April 1974, some cities were hit repeatedly. The onslaught devastated nearly 230,000 hectares. The combined distance traveled by the 148 tornadoes amounted to more than 4,000 kilometers. The tally of destruction includes 319 dead, more than 5,000 injured, 28,000 buildings seriously damaged, 10 states declared disaster areas, and $4.5 billion in damage. This sudden super eruption of tornadoes, besides being one for the record books, has carved its place in the memories of those who lived through it and the families of those who didn't.
What can you do? We've lost everything that we had.
Help will be needed. The president's declared 10 states to be major disaster areas.
Super eruptions like this, where more than 100 tornadoes form in less than 24 hours, have been observed only twice before. The first was on November 23, 1981 in the United Kingdom, when 104 tornadoes formed. But not all tornadoes are killers, and these anemic twisters caused little damage. The second instance occurred in the United States in April 2011. For 96 continuous hours, 360 tornadoes touched down in 21 states. The grim result? 324 dead and more than $12 billion in damage. The horror of the 2011 storm doesn't top the ferocity of the super eruption of 1974, the first on record and still unmatched to this day. It takes an extremely rare set of circumstances for these storms to develop. Hopefully, we'll never see the likes of the super eruption of 1974 again. Seventh in our rankings, we stay in the United States and head for Oklahoma, where in 2013, a tornado terrorized the citizens of the city of El Reno.
You need to get below ground if you possibly can. You know, if it's on top of you, you can't outrun it.
The day is May 31st, 2013. When the storm rolls in, nothing about it suggests that it will spin its way into the history books. Yet in just 40 minutes, a cataclysmic vortex will eclipse anything the experts have seen.
These reports, it's a gigantic tornado, at least a mile wide.
On the ground, several teams of intrepid or crazy tornado hunters try to get as close as possible to the colossal twister. They're determined to capture some once-in-a-lifetime images, but as the conditions deteriorate, the risk of death grows. The first observations make one thing clear. This weather event is growing at a staggering rate. At the end of the afternoon, while the population holds its breath, the danger is confirmed. What initially seemed like an ordinary tornado turned into a real monster. As it sweeps toward El Reno, the tornado achieves Category EF5 status. Its winds clocked at 480 kilometers per hour, the most violent on record. This monster is 4 kilometers in diameter. The tornado hunters closely track its course, knowing they'll never see anything like it again. It's the widest and fastest they've ever seen. Plus, the El Reno tornado has a rare feature. Not only is it huge and with extreme wind speeds, but it has several vortices. So, on the ground, the tracker must avoid multiple whirlwinds. And those sub-vortices can be just as dangerous as the main vortex, as they revolve around the main vortex. On the ground, the movement of the tornado grew from 30 kilometers per hour to more than 80. And, as if to confound the forecasters, it constantly changed direction. Many tornado hunters started tracking this strange, erratic twister, but 3 of the most famous, Tim Samaras, his son Paul, and their colleague Carl Young, get swept away. They were among the most renowned tornado hunters in the country, with thousands of hours in the field to their credit. The National Weather Service would later describe the event as the most dangerous tornado in the history of storm watching. Oklahoma City and its 600,000 inhabitants had a narrow escape. If the tornado had touched down in the city, the damage would have been catastrophic. The fact that Oklahoma City dodged this bullet demonstrates how fickle a twister can be and how avoiding one sometimes comes down to luck. If the tornado had hit a heavily populated area, the victims would have numbered in the thousands, and the devastation would have been incalculable. Even though it didn't come to that, the tornado's size and power puts the 2013 El Reno tornado among the 10 of all time.
People are just looking for their loved ones. They're looking for family members. If you take a look here at this neighborhood, excuse me.
Mike, are you all right? You're seeing some just terrible things, I'm sure, and I know you were there just moments after the tornado hit. This is going to be really tough for you, you know, to actually witness this devastation. It's just incredible.
It's tough. No question about that.
Our ranking for 6th place goes to the tornado that caused the most damage in history when it hit the town of Joplin, Missouri in 2011.
There it is. It's on the ground. I see it. I see it. Ma'am, this is a Jeff Trusty storm chaser. I have a large destructive tornado and on the southwest side of Joplin. Notify. Large tornado on the ground doing massive damage. It's an F5 going through the city. Feel it. F5, Kathy. Oh my God.
Missouri is no stranger to tornadoes. On average, the state reports about 30 per year. Unfortunately, the tornado warning system can sometimes issue false alarms. Even among the best weather experts, it's not so easy to predict the formation of a tornado. Even when the superstorm cell has all the characteristics necessary for a storm to form, the tornado oftentimes doesn't touch down.
That is from the racing east of you.
And when a large tornado does form, its path is extremely difficult for experts to anticipate. Twisters can change direction very suddenly and inexplicably. To err on the side of safety, the Weather Service issues preemptive tornado alerts, which can turn out to be false alerts.
Not saying there's a tornado on the ground. In fact, there probably isn't. This is a Doppler radar indicated potential tornado. But everyone there in Joplin needs to be taking cover.
On May 22, 2011, the residents of Jasper and Newton counties had already received countless false alarms. And when an umpteenth alert arrives, most folks decide to ignore it and simply continue their business as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening. That would prove to be a fatal mistake. The tornado forms at 5:34 p.m. and quickly escalates to a Category EF5 storm, the top of the scale. When it touches down in the town of Joplin, it is more than 1 kilometer in diameter, with winds of 320 kilometers per hour.
This is Jeff Petrosky. I'm in Joplin. I have a very destructive, probably F4, maybe F5 going through the city of Joplin right now. On the south side of town, it's doing massive destruction.
The city is devastated.
Oh my God, these things are crushed. That's a school. Oh my God, there's people walking out. They're waving at us.
In 38 minutes, the tornado traveled more than 35 kilometers at a ground speed of 50 kilometers per hour. Endowed with several vortices, it devours everything in its path.
Hello? 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 Oh, come here, sweetie. Come here, honey. Come here, sweetie. It's okay. Come here, baby. Come on, sweetie. Oh, come here, baby. It's okay. Oh, God. Oh. Anybody help? Oh, my God. It's been almost an hour now since the tornado. It's 6:45. The tornado's ripped through Joplin, southwest side of Joplin. I've already uncovered about, this is horrible. First thing to come up on is people that didn't make it.
Large and dangerous tornado moving through
Residential areas, business districts, nothing could withstand the power of the tornado's winds.
They are gone.
This is just, Paul, I've never seen a scene like this before. We just rolled up and this tornado came through maybe 45 minutes ago. I've personally witnessed injuries and fatalities here, unfortunately, in Joplin.
Houses, caught up in the powerful vortex, were simply wiped off the map. When all was said and done, more than 3,000 homes had disintegrated, and another 3,000 were badly damaged. 15,000 cars were completely destroyed. Vehicles weighing up to 3 tons were tossed in the air like toys. Some were blown so far away, their owners would never find them.
People being pulled out of buildings here this evening as well. We've come across many people. They need help. They need to get as much help in this area as possible. I think
when a tornado touches down, the greatest danger to life comes from flying debris. A tornado can tear a wooden house into thousands of splinters, projectiles, and jagged shards of glass and send them flying at high speed. Anything loose can kill in an instant. An eerie calm came over Joplin at 6:15 p.m., just after the tornado had passed. The toll is heavy. 158 people lost their lives. Another 1,000 are injured, and 10,000 are left homeless. Much of the city's infrastructure is destroyed, including 2 fire stations that are simply shattered. The storm devastated the city and its suburbs indiscriminately as it carved its trail of terror. But while the buildings that were in the path of the tornado are destroyed, it left those it passed intact. More cruel proof that in the face of the power of nature, we are all at the mercy of fate. Since the disaster, changes have been made to the tornado warning systems. Social networks now regularly spread the warning messages to the population.
But so far,
no other tornado in the United States caused more deaths than the one that touched down in Joplin in 2011.
1 tornado per day on average. So have a plan in place. know how to get warnings when they're issued. Stay safe.
So if a tornado is approaching, heed the simple, vital warning. Stay hidden until it passes.
When bad weather approaches, most Americans are inundated with weather warnings. But what if an F5 tornado were to appear with no warning at all? Well, that's what happened in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1936.
Sometimes the ideal combination of weather conditions that can lead to a tornado supereruption can cover thousands of miles.
It became the day of the killer tornado.
Fifth on our list is a smaller but still devastating eruption. It hit the towns of Tupelo, Mississippi and Gainesville, Georgia in 1936. On April the 5th, 1936, kicking off the start of tornado season, a massive supercell spawns two of the deadliest tornadoes in U.S. history. The first victim is the city of Tupelo, Mississippi. At 8:30 p.m., long after the sun had set, the mayhem begins. A Category EF5 tornado winds its way to the city. It's the size of 3 city blocks. Its winds are estimated at 480 kilometers per hour. The tornado chews up everything in its path, rich and poor neighborhoods alike. One by one, it destroys the houses on its murderous cross-town journey. As it travels, most of the large mansions in the wealthy neighborhood of Willis Heights are razed. In the popular area of Gum Pond, many houses are literally torn from their foundations and thrown into the nearby pond. The bodies of most of their inhabitants will never be found. After only a few minutes, the tornado disappears. It left in its wake hundreds of destroyed houses. Damage is assessed at $300 million. The tornado left several thousand people homeless, 1,000 injured, and at least 216 dead. In this terrible chaos that left the town all shook up, a 1-year-old child survived. His name is Elvis Aaron Presley. If fate had been cruel and the tornado had not spared little Elvis, an epic chapter of 20th century popular culture would have never been written. Sadly, the official toll of the 216 does not include the poor neighborhood's black residents. The number of the tornado's victims is, in reality, much higher and will never be known. That reflects the social reality of the United States in that era.
May 7th, 1840, the Great Natchez Tornado hit Natchez, Mississippi.
The underreporting of black deaths has a long tradition. In 1840, hundreds of slaves who lost their lives were excluded from the death toll of the Great Natchez Tornado that hit Mississippi and Louisiana. It was one of the deadliest tornadoes in history, killing more than the 300 white people. The slaves weren't seen as people, but as the property of their masters. After passing through Tupelo, the storm didn't dissipate, but continued to travel. At 8:30 the next morning, 12 hours after the tornado tore into Tupelo, 2 Category EF4 tornadoes formed about 500 kilometers away in Gainesville, Georgia. The 2 tornadoes touched down in opposite sides of Gainesville and converged on a single downtown street, like gunfighters in an old Western. Everything was shredded. In just a few minutes, the bustling street is transformed into a pile of metal, wood, bricks, and concrete. At the time the tornadoes touch down, the residents of Gainesville are already at their jobs. The trouser factory where 60 workers have just started their day collapses and catches fire. There will be no survivors. In the city center, pedestrians take refuge in a department store. That too will be completely destroyed. Gainesville, reduced to rubble, looks as if it had just suffered an intense aerial bombardment. The final official death toll of 203 is undoubtedly underestimated. In the face of such hell, an accurate count of the victims was simply impossible. Together, the super eruption of tornadoes that devastated the cities of Tupelo and Gainesville had an official, though underreported, death count of 454, making it one of the deadliest in U.S. history.
Y'all see that? Yeah. Look at it, look. Wow, straight, look at that.
They got a freaking water spout coming down.
We were in it. No, we were in it, man.
Yeah, we were in it.
It's a tornado now, Brad. Look at this. Look how wide it is.
Look at it now.
And y'all can see the circulation of water in there. Man, that is amazing, Landon.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I've never seen anything like that close.
Europe is not spared from tornadoes. In our 4th place ranking of the most destructive tornadoes in history, we look to the one that hit Sicily in 1851. In Europe, hot, humid air rising from Africa towards the Mediterranean encounters the cool air descending from the Arctic Circle and collides with the jet stream which blows from west to east. It creates the perfect recipe for tornadoes. On average, between 200 and 300 each year. They seldom attain the power of the storms that sweep the United States, but that doesn't mean it never happens. On a few occasions, the European continent bore the brunt of Category EF5 tornadoes, and 2 of them are among the deadliest in history. The first, in Malta, in the 16th century, is notable because it killed several hundred people. But this early hurricane wasn't the worst. The one that touched down at the port of Marsala in Sicily on December 8, 1951, made history for several reasons, as it was caused by one of nature's most spectacular phenomena, a tornadic waterspout. Waterspouts typically form when whirlpools lift water from the sea. Most of the time, these waterspouts move slowly and are not very powerful. A tornadic waterspout, on the other hand, can be incredibly destructive. It can form above the water, or surprisingly, above the ground, and then move towards the sea. Inside its vortex, the winds can whip up to the same speed as a traditional tornado, but unlike a terrestrial tornado, the whirlpool will capture and dump hundreds of tons of water. As the churning waterspout builds a massive amount of energy, it unleashes a fury that can destroy everything in its path. On this fateful day in the year 1851, a superstorm cell hanging over Sicily gives birth to 2 tornadic-type waterspouts that ravage the port of Marsala. The twisting walls of water shatter every boat in the port, drowning their crews. As if they're hungry for more, the waterspouts then come ashore. Witnesses lucky to survive record seeing the 2 huge vortices, 500 meters apart, moving side by side over a distance of 70 kilometers, chewing up everything in their path and unleashing millions of tons of water and hailstones. The improbable, unstoppable storms invade the town of Castellamare, destroying half of its buildings and killing 200 people. Not yet done, the Twin Terrors destroy more boats and their crews near the Castellamare port. Historical records are imprecise, but it is believed that at least 500 people died following the passage of these 2 angels of death. The record of devastation left by this extremely rare, spectacular phenomenon demonstrates just how bizarre nature can be. The third place storm on our rankings list takes us to South Asia, where, in 1996, a Category EF2 tornado touched down in the country of Bangladesh.
Dhaka is now the most crowded city.
Bangladesh is 1/3 the size of France, but it has about 2.5 times the population. On average, only 6 tornadoes hit the country each year, but each one causes considerable damage. With a GDP per capita 17 times lower than France and an average income of less than 300 euros per month, the country is considered very poor. Besides its poverty and its dense population, the vast majority of its homes are poorly built. Those 3 factors combined greatly aggravate the consequences of any natural disaster. Over the past 60 years, more than 5,000 Bangladeshis have been killed by tornadoes. That's more deaths by tornadoes than occurred in the United States, a startling fact considering America experiences 200 times more tornadoes than Bangladesh. Because of crowding and poor construction, Bangladesh has suffered 14 of the 25 deadliest tornadoes in history. It's a tragedy that plays out every time a tornado strikes there. Villages are razed to the ground, and hundreds of inhabitants are killed. One of the worst incidents happened on May 13, 1996, when a Category EF2 tornado touched down in the Daulatpur district. It lasted only 20 minutes, and its winds reached an unremarkable 200 kilometers per hour, but it completely devastated 80 villages. Thousands of houses are wiped out. Besides the lack of an effective tornado warning system, after the storm, Bangladesh's emergency services were completely overwhelmed, leaving the survivors to fend for themselves. While trying to find food, water, and shelter, they also had to provide dignified burials for the storm's victims. And they had no outside help to rebuild their villages. The toll of the 1996 tornado was dramatic and heartbreaking. More than 700 dead, 37,000 injured, 100,000 homeless, and 35,000 houses destroyed. That scale of tragedy could never have happened in the United States, where the population density is 33 times lower than that of Bangladesh, and where the inhabitants are much better prepared to face tornadoes. There have been at least 6 deadly tornadoes in Bangladesh since 1996, and even today, there is no warning system in the country. We can only hope that one day the authorities of Bangladesh will manage to avoid another tragedy.
The winds are on the north, and it's coming back around. Tornadoes right here. Get the sirens going, I'm telling you. Fred, if you don't go south, we're gonna die!
The United States experiences hundreds of tornadoes every year. And so, in second place on our ranking, is the one that distinguishes itself as the worst American tornado of all time. The tornado that hit Missouri, Indiana, and Illinois on March 18, 1925. It has been dubbed the Tri-State Tornado, and its scale is unprecedented. An average tornado has winds of around 160 kilometers per hour, lasts less than an hour, and travels on the ground for around 15 kilometers. The Tri-State Tornado was, by far, above average in every respect. It is 12:45 a.m. when the tornado hits Reynolds County. The rain and hail are so intense, the swirl of debris so thick, that witnesses believe that it's a cloud of dust. But it is indeed a Category EF5 tornado. Its punishing winds reach a whopping 480 kilometers per hour. The tornado will travel a long distance, crossing the immense plains of the Midwest. As it carves its deadly path, it will annihilate a succession of small towns, smashing them to bits one after another, leaving behind only rubble and the mutilated bodies of the inhabitants. It first strikes the mining town of Annapolis and almost entirely levels it. Then it crosses the Mississippi and destroys the city of Gorham. By that time, the tornado is nearly 2 kilometers wide and racing along the ground at over 100 kilometers per hour. The town of Murfreesboro is next to be devastated, its neat rows of houses reduced to nothing. 234 inhabitants are killed. A little further on, the town of DeSoto suffers the same fate. Then on to the densely populated working-class neighborhoods of West Frankfort. There, the hurricane claims 102 lives. Amazingly, the size of the tornado continues to grow. It reaches nearly 2.5 kilometers wide. It obliterates the small town of Parrish, never to be rebuilt. A little further, the town of Griffin suffers the twister's wrath. Next, the large industrial city of Princeton succumbs. It's one of the final victims. Soon after, the tornado finally ends its deadly journey in the surrounding countryside. In 3.5 hours, the tri-state tornado had traveled 320 kilometers and destroyed 13 cities. When the chaos ends, the results are tallied. 651 people dead, 2,200 injured, and $2 billion of property damage are reported. The tornado was not only one of the most powerful on record, but it traveled twice as fast, twice as far, and lasted 3 times longer than any other. Almost a century later, it has entered the annals as one of the worst natural disasters the United States has ever endured. Finding yourself in the path of one of the worst tornadoes in history would undoubtedly be the most terrifying moment of your life, and probably your last. There's no truer demonstration of the power of nature than a tornado, but among them all, there could only be one number one on the list. And here it is, the 1989 tornado that tore through Bangladesh and the cities of Daulatpur and Saturya. Bangladesh, April 26th of 1989. Warm air from the Bay of Bengal crosses the Ganges Delta and meets cool air from the Himalayas. A large thunderstorm supercell begins to form over the region. At the same time, the jet stream blowing through the upper atmosphere is extremely powerful. It adds fuel to the formation of a tornado near the city of Daulatpur. By sundown, the conditions rapidly escalate. The emerging tornado becomes a Category EF4, measures 1.5 kilometers in diameter, and its winds whip up to 320 kilometers per hour. It touches down in the middle of a densely populated area, occupied by fragile houses. It's the worst possible scenario. The slums of the region don't stand a chance. As one survivor recounted, I saw clouds coming up in the sky, and the next moment, I was flying away with my home. The same scene repeats again and again along the relentless path of the tornado. When it's finally done, it will have blazed a trail 80 kilometers long. In only a few moments, a 600-hectare area is reduced to a field of ruin. The tornado left 20 villages completely destroyed, leaving no place for the survivors to find shelter. More than 1,300 are dead, and 12,000 are injured. The 80,000 inhabitants of these villages lost absolutely everything. But for those who survived, the worst is yet to come. The drought that had plagued the region for 6 months had made the soil too arid to be able to absorb the enormous amount of rainfall that is sweeping the area. The few crops that managed to endure the passage of the tornado will be doomed by the floods that follow. The tens of thousands of suffering families attempting to rebuild their homes after the disaster now face starvation and the rapid spread of disease. The number of victims of the Daulatpur and Saturya tornado is unprecedented in history. We can only hope that an event like the one that struck Bangladesh in 1989 will not be repeated.
This is absolutely incredible. Look at it come down.
Whoa.
There it is.
Wow, look how close.
Look at that.
Holy
oh my God, sisters.
Look how close
we got sisters.
Without a doubt, tornadoes are one of the most spectacular naturally occurring phenomena. A spiraling concentration of destructive energy with winds approaching 500 kilometers per hour, focused in an area that rarely exceeds 1.5 kilometers in width. In just a few minutes, these vortices can smash anything that stands in their path. But a tornado's potential for destruction also depends on the path it takes. Some of the most powerful and potentially catastrophic hit only uninhabited fields and cause no lasting damage. On the other hand, tornadoes with less strength have claimed the lives of hundreds of victims. It only goes to show that when faced with the power of nature, there's also an element of fate.
Duck down! Duck down!